Hello and many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Imonia Marire. Now, shortly before the coronavirus pandemic hit Nigeria in 2020, we on this program drew attention to the dangers of Nigeria's absolute dependence on other countries for her pharmaceutical needs and supplies. 61 years after political independence, Nigeria does not manufacture the most basic of its medical and pharmaceutical needs, but continues to import about everything and anything. The COVID-19 pandemic appears to have driven the point home to most countries, and especially Nigeria, that you can only depend on what you have and control. President Muhammadu Buhari in his 2021 Independence Day broadcast acknowledged this when he said his administration has put policies and plans in place to enhance Nigeria's domestic pharmaceutical capacity and independence.
As we wish to source vaccine for our immediate needs, we shall invest more to support our pharmaceutical and research agencies to come up with ideas for locally developed vaccines. Should another pandemic arise in the future, our question is simple. Will Nigeria be ready? Accordingly, I have directed the Ministries of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Health, Education, Science and Technology to work with Nigerian and international pharmaceutical companies and research organizations to enhance Nigeria's domestic pharmaceutical capacity. Already, the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority is raising a $200 million United States fund for this initiative that will complement the Central Bank of Nigeria's ongoing 85 billion naira healthcare sector research and development intervention scheme to support local researchers in the development of vaccines and drugs to combat communicable and non-communicable diseases, including COVID-19. Fellow Nigerians, this is just the beginning. Similarly, on our approach to food security, I am proud to announce Nigeria has commenced its journey to pharmaceutical independence. This journey, which will take years to achieve, but will ultimately result in Nigerian-based companies developing the active pharmaceutical substances and the competence needed for us to make our own drugs and vaccines.
At some of the indices that make pharmaceutical security an imperative. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, says Nigeria relies on China and other Asian and European countries for up to 70% of our drug imports. Nigeria imports virtually everything, including active, non-active ingredients and equipment. This is despite the fact that the country has over 100 drug manufacturing companies that can hardly supply 30% of Nigeria's drug needs. Indeed, the companies rely on drug imports because it's far easier and perhaps cheaper to import than to produce locally. The manufacturers finger unfair government policies, including high import tariffs of up to 25% for manufacturing inputs, while finished products attract zero duty. They also talk about lack of access to raw materials, the unavailability of grants for local drug manufacturers, and the reluctance of government to invest in research and development of local pharmaceutical ingredients. When necessity, they say, is the mother of invention. The reality on ground around the world today is that nation states must learn to depend on themselves more. Now, will the new move by the federal government point Nigeria in the right direction for medical and pharmaceutical security? How feasible and practicable are some of the policies outlined by the president? What are the likely challenges of achieving the set goals, and what is the way forward? These are the issues we'll be looking at on the program today. So join our panel of experts as we explore these issues right after this timeout. All right, let's get to meet our guest on the program today. Dr. Obi P. Adigwe is the Director General, National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development here in the nation's capital, Abuja. He's joining us right here in the studio. Dr. Adigwe, thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you, Imoni. It's my pleasure to be here.
Welcome. Also joining us here in the studio is pharmacist Ifeanyi Ikebodu. He's the chairman, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you so much, Mr. Ikebodu, for joining us.
Thank you so very much, Imoni.
And we're joined online virtually from Yola in Adamawa State by Mazi Sam Ohuaboa. Mazi E. Ohuaboa is the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Will be joining us very shortly from Yola. Gentlemen, thank you so much for finding time to join us. This new direction by the federal government, a drive at making Nigeria pharmaceutically independent country, how feasible, how realizable, given all that we have in Nigeria today, how feasible is this drive likely to be?
Yeah, thank you, Imoni. Let me begin by saying that as a public servant, there is no better gratification that one can get than for the president, the chief policy maker of his country, opening his mouth, and I can hear my words coming out of the president's mouth. And I think we've reached a crescendo which has to be acknowledged. However, the intro, you know, the very beautiful intro that was put together, that you read out, was put together very well. In some areas, very accurate representation, but some other areas have outdated information. And I'll tell you why. Because this journey, the announcement by the president on the 1st of October was the crescendo, but it wasn't the beginning of this move. This move actually started close to a decade ago when a small but powerful group called the PMG-MAN, that's the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group, articulated that concept called medicine security, which in your intro, you have very, very cleverly linked to the president's announcement of pharmaceutical independence. They are one and the same. This body came up with that concept of medicine security and used it to drive engagement with government. About half a decade ago, we had a situation where you had the common external tariff, which meant that any imported goods coming into Nigeria or West Africa, indeed, as far as they were finished products, attracted zero duty, whereas equipment and APIs coming in would attract somewhere between 10 and 30% duty. In the 2016 fiscal policy, the administration took a very big move in reversing that particular policy. And it ring-fenced 4 categories for local manufacturers. Those 4 categories are antimalarials, hematinics, alkaloids, and antibiotics. So in these 4 categories, where there was enough data to show that local manufacturers had more than enough capacity to satisfy national consumption, an import duty of 20% for imported products was put on those activities. And that was actually the beginning of this journey to medicine security or pharmaceutical independence, as you would have it. That particular singular move led to a multi-million-dollar inflow of new investment into the pharmaceutical sector. It led to a double-digit growth in those 4 categories. Not less than 20 local manufacturers started to build new factories, upgrade their factories, and begun to employ Nigerians. And these are the things that go along with putting in a policy that is friendly. Following that 2016 fiscal policy, government also took certain strategic moves on the road to medicine security. Another of them was the Executive Order number 3. If you go to Section 4F, it is categorically stated there that government agencies must prioritize procurement from locally manufactured pharmaceutical organizations. That is also in that line. If you go to Executive Order number 5, the same thing, that the articulation and implementation of science, technology, engineering projects need to, encapsulate local content. So these are 2 other areas where government did further policies in the road to medicine security or pharmaceutical independence. Now, more recently, within this COVID period, government increased almost 100-fold its funding to research and development agencies that focused on COVID-19. And these are just a few of the steps that have been taken by the current administration in moving towards pharmaceutical independence or medicine security. I think the culmination of it, like I said earlier on, is the policy statement, the strong policy statement that was put together by the president. And what remains now is for all stakeholders who have been sort of like prevaricating. Some of them have had wax in their ears for close to a decade now, to now unplug their ears, listen to the direction that this country wants to go to, and then key in to ensure that we can implement this in the shortest realizable time.
Mr. Ikebudu, you are a pharmaceutical practitioner. How much of what the DG has talked about in terms of policies and in actual fact, plans that government has put in place over time with the Executive Order 3, Executive Order 5, and all the other things he has outlined, how much have those things really guaranteed pharmaceutical security over the years?
Well, thank you so
much. Or
are
they just on paper?
Well, first of all, I want to commend the President and the federal government as it were on the steps that have been taken to guarantee medicine security in the country. Let us look at the facts before us. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million, and we have about 160 companies in the country presently manufacturing pharmaceuticals. And by way of the size of our pharmaceutical sector, we're about $1.8 billion strong. And in the next 5 or 6 years, we expect to hit $5.3 billion as the financial strength of the pharmaceutical industry. Talking about the policies that have been on ground over the years towards ensuring this medicine security, I think as a country we have very laudable policies and projects, but our impediment has always been to put these policies into practice. It was not last year that the federal government talked about an intervention funding for the pharmaceutical sector, because we realized that last year during the COVID pandemic, in fact, we import almost 100% of our pharmaceutical excipients from Asian countries, from China, from India. The machinery for the pharmaceutical sector is imported wholesomely. We cannot fabricate machinery in this country. And we also import about 70% of our finished products into the country. And this doesn't go well at all, as it were, for the sector. So if the government has really, as it were, woken up towards ensuring medicine security in the country, That is very, very laudable, and we commend it as a professional group. However, I want to task the government not only to make pronouncement on policies, but to go the extra mile, to take this next step by ensuring that these policies are implemented. There should be frameworks and roadmaps towards achieving these policies that have been so initiated, so that the country, as it were, could ensure basic security in the next foreseeable future.
All right. Well, we have on the line Mr. Mazi Sam Huaboa, who is the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. He's joining us from Yola. You are not just a practitioner, but you are also in the manufacturing sector. So now, looking at the policies that have been put in place over the years and what the DG, Dr. Adigwe, has talked about as incremental steps that the government has taken year after year to ensure that there is medical security. How much of these would you say has impacted in the manufacturing sector of pharmaceuticals?
Thank you very much. I believe that we wouldn't be on this show if things have gone well enough. We'll find a situation where we are very strong on saying what needs to be done, but not doing them the same way we say they were going to be done. Our country has been deficit in understanding how to promote industry. We don't have the right industrial motivation, and therefore we are unable to understand that industrial offtake is a long-term project and also capital intensive and involves the enabling environment. So what we find in our country today is that we are largely making policies with poor implementation and lack of consistency. Very often, policies are reversed at the shortest possible notice. And so you can see that we have an industry that is struggling. We have policies way back in 2000, in 1995, what they call drug health policy, that says by the year 2005, we should be producing 75% of our local drug needs in Nigeria. But as I speak to you, we are not doing past about 40%. We have not even gotten to 50%. And the major reasons are problem with consistent policy implementation. 2, the unavailability of the appropriate funding and financing regime. 3, the problem of inclement operating environment. We operate in a global world today. China is producing, India is producing, and we have a WTO and a global market. Why would anybody buy a pharmaceutical product made in Nigeria if he can get another good quality product from India that is cheaper? We know the cost of doing business in our country, which is accentuated by infrastructure deficit, value depreciation of the Naira. The Naira is depreciated so badly that when we import any good, we're already bringing goods that are going to be uncompetitive by the time we finish manufacturing them. And I want to thank God that even now we have the Central Bank of Nigeria trying to support the industry to increase its capacity. Because first we need to increase our capacity and capability to be able to compete with the rest of the world. So overall, the policies have underperformed because of inconsistency and the inappropriate incentives that are available to motivate industrial growth in a global competitive environment. We need to recheck how we support our industries and make sure that our country has the psychology of an industrial nation, a value-adding nation that can get its own need satisfied and then export to the rest of the world.
Thank you. DG, you need to respond to some of those issues that have been raised here. Inconsistent government policies and the kind of support that government gives to the manufacturers themselves in order to meet the needs, the pharmaceutical needs of the country. It appears that over time, the policies have been there, but their implementation may have had some hiccups here and there. And then there are situations where government has said, okay, we are going to support the industry in this manner, but bureaucracy seems to cripple such processes. But the policies are there. The intentions are good, but the implementation seems to have a problem.
Yeah, Imoni, there isn't any debate here. I agree totally with what the president of the PSN, Mazi Huabunwa, has said. The chronology I laid out for you was from 2016 to 2019. His chronology was longer. There is no doubt that if you look at the industry is almost going very dangerously close to a century old. And if you look at decades, if you look at decades behind us, overall, the policies have been inconsistent. I focused on 2016 to 2021, and that was the chronology I gave. Now, I have a unique position because the engagement I put out earlier on between 2016 and 2018, I was actually sitting on the other side of the fence. So I was the executive secretary of the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group, which is a private sector entity. And at that stage, we had inherited a policy milieu where imported goods were, more favorable than manufactured goods. And at that stage, like I said earlier on, PMG Man needs to be lauded because this is a small but powerful group that took up advocacy. In Nigeria, we have this frequent behavior of waiting for government to do everything. That's not what PMG Man did. PMG Man picked up its advocacy power and engaged government at the highest levels. Before the reversal of CET, Imoni, are you aware that 2 ministers of this administration almost got queried before that particular CET was reversed? So there is no debate about the policy inconsistency over decades. I focused on 2016 to 2021, and I've laid out categorically these policies and the impact of the policies in the sector. If we have the time, I can call the names of the companies that built new factories. I can tell you how many people that were employed. I can tell you the inflow, companies that were bought into from foreign partners because it became much more hostile for them to import goods rather than manufacture it after they have bought an entity. These figures are out there. Also, you can go ahead and look at my pedigree as well as the pedigree of Dr. Okeakpa, who was my chairman at the time. We articulated medicine security and pushed it forward, and government bought into it. So it's not actually a government initiative. It's an initiative that came from the private sector. Government listened and bought into it. Now, talking about results take time, right? I've just given you 2016 to 2021, and I've given you the output that has come from these 5 or 6 policy interventions. By no means am I saying that we're where we're meant to be. Everybody in the sector knows me. I have a very abrasive personality because I go straight to the point. I don't have time for niceties. A lot more work needs to be done. There are areas where we still have weaknesses. For instance, AFCFTA, we're not very well prepared for the 50 billion US dollar market that Africa presents. And in fact, that figure, based on our latest analysis, is set to grow to somewhere between 60 and 70 billion, based on the capacity that we have. The 160 local manufacturers, the 4 WHO-certified companies in the country, the world-class scientists and researchers that we have, we should be looking at capturing somewhere between 30 and 50% of that market. That is not happening. We're not looking at phytomedicines well enough. Phytomedicines, Nigeria is blessed with thousands of plants that have ethnomedicinal and ethnopharmaceutical potential. And people still have a hesitancy. A lot of stakeholders still don't have the understanding, despite our engagement, about the potential of this sector. It's a sector that India makes billions of dollars, and we're not even talking about conventional medicines. NIPRID was the first institute to take 4 phytomedicine combination from drug discovery to phase 2 clinical trials. That particular product for sickle cell anemia is used in over 40 countries across the world. We're not looking at these areas. A few more areas where I can detail that we're not looking at. And this is what this policy pronouncement by the president does. What it does is that all those development partners, all those philanthropists that we have written and engaged with, now they will know that we have the president's ears.
Okay.
They now need to start engaging so that collectively we can put together a broad-based framework and begin expeditious implementation.
Well, we will come back to the research component of this because we are vital to the industry. Research is very, very vital to the development of these drugs and the manufacture of these drugs. But let me get back to Mazi Onwabuwa. Well, the president has laid out very clearly what he says is an attempt at driving pharmaceutical independence. $200 million fund for this initiative, in addition to what the Central Bank of Nigeria is already doing, 85 billion naira in that regard. And of course, this is both in research, development, and manufacturing, what he refers to as an intervention scheme. How adequate do you think this is for the industry to achieve the goals which the president envisages?
Thank you. I like to say that I am happy that the president identified the pharmaceutical industry in his Independence Day speech. It was heartwarming to me as the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria that for once, the president of our country mentioned my industry. You know, our industry and our business used to be forgotten. You know, sometimes they talk about health. They don't remember that pharmacists have any role to play in health. It's only one category of professionals are mentioned and are taken care of. So I'm glad that the government, thank God for COVID, if I can say that, now knows that pharmaceuticals are important. They know that self-sufficiency in local production is important. They know that medicines can be a national security issue. China closed its border and we began to shiver. India closed its border, we almost ran out of products in the market. So I'm glad. Now, the truth of the matter is that there are many things that will make this industry attain the expected outcome. Number one is the issue of funding, financing, long-term finance, not the one we get from the banks 60 days, 160 days, 120 days, 180 days, maximum 360 days, and at double-digit interest. You can't sustain an industry at short-term funding and high interest rates. So we're happy that the CBN is understanding this, and that's why they're giving us single-digit and long tenure. That's the beginning. And what the CBN has done is like a drop in an ocean. It's just a little drop. 100 billion, 80 billion cannot build two or three good GMP compliant products, company that can give you the kind of globally competitive pharmaceutical, especially in the area of biovaccines, intravenous products, injectables, and the new genre of medicines. However, it's a good start. So let's get more funding, more dedicated funding, long-term, long-tenured, and low interest. The second, sir, is to find a way to deal with the infrastructure deficit that our country has. Because if we build these plants and we are still producing at high cost, high output cost, because we are paying for electricity, double. We are the ones running our routes, running our vehicles, doing distribution, providing security for our companies and our staff and everybody else. Our costs will become so high that, especially looking at our desire to participate in the African continental free trade arrangement, Nigeria is situated, and with this investment, we should be able to compete. But if cost of production remains high, then we may never attain that competitive level to allow exports to go to other parts of the world. Instead, we'll continue to receive. Thirdly, sir, is to have a consistent government policy, consistent in terms of the fact that local purchase, local production will be enhanced. Not tomorrow government will have who else make these products, then they tell us they are using global fund or multilateral funding, and they're going to buy from Europe, from America. Then why do we have to develop our own capacity if we're not going to get consistent patronage? Number 4 is the fact that we don't have APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. This is why I'm happy to see Dr. Adigwe on this call, because he's championing local production of the raw materials so that this money we're getting for government stays at home. Otherwise, we'll spend the money to China and India buying their raw materials. We need Nigeria to develop its local raw materials capacity, starting from our flora and fauna. We have the phytochemical, we have the plants, we have other natural sources. It requires an intensified industrial investigation. So my point is that if we continue to provide this funding, have the appropriate operating environment where the infrastructure deficit can be dealt with, support local research and development to provide the inputs into industry, and put some more money in human resource development, especially educational development, so that we can train the manpower that will run this industry, both in terms of research and development, in terms of production, and also in terms of engineering required to provide the enabling factories that are globally competitive and meet WHO GMP. This, for me, will keep this industry in the right position to achieve the intent of the president and the country.
Mr. Ekebodu, Nigeria is a developing country. Unlike the developed economies of, say, Europe, Americas, and some in Asia, where for now we rely so much on the import of our drugs. What are those global best practices that can actually help to restructure and revive the pharmaceutical sector?
Thank you. I think, aside what has been said, the first thing we need to do is to create an enabling environment for the sector. Then secondly is to have the right legislation, because without the right legislation, we won't be able to get our acts together. Now, for instance, the current pharmacy bill that we are using in operation now has very minimal impediments for offenders within the sector, and that has tended to encourage a lot of malpractices within the sector. Presently, we have a bill that is before the president, and we are looking at if that bill is signed into law, would help a long way towards ensuring that the sector practices optimally. So the first thing we need to do, aside this financing, aside having the right environment, aside the infrastructural development, is to have a legislation that will enable investors to come within the country to invest within the pharmaceutical sector.
How are you, the practitioners yourselves, regulating the sector at the moment? Because, like you said, there are some bad eggs in the industry, quacks, who are manufacturing or even bringing in fake drugs.
We have a couple of agencies that regulate the sector, but chiefly we have two agencies. That is NAFDAC on one side and the Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria on the other side. NAFDAC regulates our products, while PCN regulates our practice and personnel. The regulation is not exactly top-notch because of the inadequacies of the legislation we have. And that is why we've been crying for so long for the president to help us in assent to this bill. Because as it were, PCN is like a very strong wrestler that you are sent into the ring to fight another strong wrestler. However, you have tied the hands of PCN behind him, and you have given these other opponents all the armaments to fight against you. So PCN is waging a war against extreme forces that have not been able to be curbed by the weak legislations we have. So until and after PCN is empowered strongly, legislatively and personnel and funding, they will be able to get that sector under the right control. Presently, like I said earlier, we import almost 70% of our drug needs in the country. And most of these drug needs come through borders that are very porous and open. We don't have the right personnel at the borders to checkmate medicines that are coming to the country. We have open drug markets that are purely unregulated, that are manned by non-professionals. This is what part of the NDG, that is the National Drug Guidelines, tries to curb. If those things are implemented, where you have sections that are controlled by personnel, where you have NAFDAC and PCN in those NDG centers or CWC centers, that at every point in time there is continuous regulation and enforcement, then the issue of all this fakery will be curbed. And by the time somebody looks at your sector and sees that the sector is completely controlled, there will not be this innovation or this interest to come in and put in the dollars to invest. That we can now start talking about having medicine security within the country.
DG, Dr. Adigwe, let's now look at your role. I mean, happily you are coming from the manufacturing into the research sector. And research is very key to the development of drugs and their manufacture. How much do you think is required? Do we have enough research institutes in the country today, research centers, working on in this sector? Like yours now, for instance, NIPRID is very well known, but how many more are there? How many more are required? How much more is required to set these ones up and put them on the right footing to be able to provide the needs and that of the industry itself? Because like you know, and you said it earlier on, it takes quite a period of time to come up with research and development of drugs and even vaccines.
Yeah, thank you. Let me borrow the style of my colleague in the studio and begin by giving you an analogy. A lot of times when people hear that I'm the Director General of a research agency that focuses on pharmaceuticals and phytomedicines, the first thing they ask me is, what have you done for COVID-19? Now, let me tell you where we were before government improved our funding. Nigeria, based on indices put together by, I think it's UNESCO, one of the World Health Organization bodies, spends somewhere around 0.1% of its GDP on research and development. Countries like South Korea, China, America spend close to 5% of their GDP. What it means is that these countries spend over 100 times of their GDP. And their GDP in real terms is also 3-4 times more than our GDP. That is one index for you to hold on to. Second index is the number of researchers as articulated by figures such as PhDs. And Nigeria has about 38 researchers per million. Whereas these countries I've called have somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 per million. So again, we're talking about 300, 400 times what we are putting in terms of research and development.
In terms of human resources.
Human resources. So what it means is that Mr. Adigwe and Mr. Amarere are going to do a cooking competition, and you have given Mr. Adigwe 1,000 naira to go to the market to purchase ingredients, buy gas and all those things, and you have given Mr. Amarere 200,000 naira to undertake the same activity, and on Judgment Day, you're judging Mr. Amarere and Mr. Adigwe using the same parameters. Is it not ridiculous? That is what we have been facing in research and development. And that's why, if for anything else, let me tell you the truth. You see, President Buhari's speech, like I said, is one of the highlights of my professional career. Because for decades, people like Dr. Okea Akpa and myself have been preaching this mantra. In 2017, the door was shut against us. We had a room full of 40 development partners, and only one agreed that they would partner with us in terms of local manufacturing. But today, the president of the country has indicated in his speech, he spent close to 5% of his speech talking about medicine security. It's a powerful message. And it now behoves on other stakeholders to realize the direction in which the country is going. So that if tomorrow you go to the presidency and you're asking for one favor or the other favor, and the president asks you, where is the bottom line of your statement? How much have you given to pharmaceutical R&D in the past year? Don't be surprised, because that will be a parameter with which Nigeria will be judging you. Back to your question, Imoni. I want to say here categorically that there is nobody more patriotic than the scientists who work in this country. I was privileged to undertake my first degree at the University of Jos, and my master's and my PhD in Scotland and England, respectively. And I know what the environment is over there. For people who work in research and development in this country that could be doing the same job elsewhere, honestly, no one is more patriotic than they are. And consistently, we dip our hands in our pockets and use our salaries because we're passionate about this country, because we're passionate about research and development. Thank goodness the recent prioritization that government has given has crescendoed with the speech, alongside the engagement with the National Assembly that has led to inflow of new funding into research and development. The National Assembly, under the leadership of people like Honorable Bajabiamela, Honorables Michelia, Oloriegbe, and Sununu, put together a framework where we got funding and brought in close to 100 new equipment in NIPRID. Before then, we were still carrying out world-class research. You know the work we did on COVID organics, first categorical report in the whole world. You know the work we did on Niprimmune. We put out our findings first before colleagues even brought out theirs in Thailand. You know the work we did on high-quality hand sanitizers. And I can go on and on. Our verification protocol that is now online, these things were done even before we got this inflow. Imagine what we can do now.
How much support or how much collaboration are the research institutes getting from other international research centers or institutes across the world?
We are getting, so this is the conundrum. The work we do here is better recognized internationally than amongst people here in the country. That is the conundrum. We put together proposals in the institute, which the government of Japan used to give the institute intervention of close to 6 billion naira. They put together a lab on nanotechnology focused on drug development. We put together international standard research proposals and concept notes, which the ECOWAS recognized and is partnering with us for a COVID-related intervention. We put together several other world-class research proposals and concept notes that has attracted partnership and attention from across the world. But guess what? Philanthropic organizations, foundations, private sector entities in Nigeria, over 50 of them that we have written to say, this is where we need to be going to. Can we work with you to get there? No response. I must laud entities like the PMG man that gave us inflow of close to 50 million naira. FIDSIN also gave us inflow of close to 50 million naira. And the PSN, of which the president is on this call, has also given us some multi-million naira intervention for partnership. My point is, it is few and far between, and other stakeholders need to step up.
All right. President of PSN, let's have your last word here. Where you seem to have been very busy with the research institutes. Are you getting value for money?
Well, I believe so. We have found that our research institutes have the appropriate human resources, the human capacity. But what they have learned over these many years is the proper motivation to be able to do the work. Many of them are not well funded. Their laboratories are not updated. They are not modern. The equipment for them to work is not there. So for many years, they've been lying fallow. You know, sometimes doing only academic research and not doing research that is directed to producing and solving industry problems. But we can see that COVID-19 has become a new stimulus. And we believe that those institutions, especially institutions like Nigerian Institute of Medical Research and Nigerian Institute of Medical Research and the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, they have shown that if they have the right funding, the right technology, the right motivation.
President of PSN, Mazisa Mohabua, obviously he is on the road and the network is fluctuating, but we want to thank you immensely for finding time to join us out of your tight schedule to be on this program. Thank you very much. And of course, Pharmacist Ifeanyi Kebodo, 30 seconds. What would be your closing word?
Well, I want to, first of all, like my president said earlier, to appreciate the president of the country, General Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for having come to appreciate the great role that the pharmaceutical sector plays in medicine security in the country. We cannot keep on living on a regime of drug importation, because that is going to practically kill the country. We spend so much money importing drugs, lose so much foreign exchange importing these drugs, and this foreign exchange is not even coming at the right rates. So I want to appreciate the president for what he has done, but also to try to walk the talk. Then secondly, and very importantly, I want to ask and plead, just like every Nigerian pharmacist is doing, that the president graciously signs the pharmacy bill that's on his table presently, because without that, we cannot start to go towards what we intend to achieve.
All right. Good. Dr. Adigwe, very quickly, in 20 seconds, if you can, what would you, how many years would you say it will take us to get to where we want to be?
The president has made it clear what direction we need to go. It is left for us all. And when I say us all, I don't mean government. I mean government, private sector, development partners, philanthropists, health communicators like yourselves. It is left for us all to now get off our asses, partner, and begin to do the work. If we do all that together, 5 to 10 years is a long period for us to achieve medicine security for Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Dr. Obipi Adigwe is the Director General, National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRID, right here in the nation's capital. Thank you so much for your time. And the pharmacist Ifeanyi Ikebudu is the chairman of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, PSN, in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you for your time. And of course, Mazi Sam Ohuabua is the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. He joined us virtually from Yola in Adamawa State. Thank you. And for you, the viewer out there, we want to thank you for investing your time with us. We look forward to having you again, where we'll bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.